Hello Glee, my name is Albert Marion Davis. I am your great-grandfather. I'd like to tell you a short story of my life. I was born in Provo, Utah, December 10, 1855, in a two-room log house. I was the eighth-born child of 12 born to polygamist Joshua Davis and Susan Ann Cole, Joshua's first wife of 3. They were your great-grandparents. He was well known in Provo. He was the first appointed sheriff of Utah County. I saw my father every week my whole life. I helped make the adobes for 2 more rooms that were added to the front of the original house. I lived on my father's farm. I was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints by John Turner at the age of 8. I attended school in a log house near the mill race on 2nd West, between 2nd and 3rd North. We had little or no paper, so we went to Slate Canyon to get slate to write on. I spent the winter months in school but worked on my father's farms in the spring and summer. I enjoyed helping provide for our family's table by fishing on the Provo River, that was full of trout, and hunting quail, sage grouse, and ducks. I trapped beaver and mink for my mother to make capes for my sisters. I made good money catching and selling fish. My friends called me Al. I was an adventurer and trader. I was a good friend of the Indians whom I met on my many hunting and fishing trips. I peddled fruit and vegetables to the Indian reservation. Each fall many Indians came to camp on my farm, helped me harvest, while they secured supplies for the winter. I cut trees in Provo Canyon and floated them down the river for the first railroad ties to be used in Provo. I was married to Elizabeth Annie Hawes, age 17, on July 20, 1882 by Bishop Marion Tanner. We lived in a 3-room adobe house on 3rd West and 4th North. We had 4 children born there. 2 died within 6 months. Elizabeth died of kidney inflammation, on November 12, 1889 at the age of 24. I was left with 2 living children, Earl age 6 and Hazel age 4. I met Mary Elizabeth Broadbent Gorley. She was the widow of George Gorley, a polygamist, who had died in 1888. She was living in Goshen with one 6-year-old son, David. She came to Provo and worked for me from April until December of 1890. Andrew Thomas Jr. ordained me an elder. After which we were married in the Man-Tai LDS Temple for time. I was 35 years old at the time. She was 26. We built a comfortable 5-room brick home on our farm in Provo, at 1020 West 500 North. We cleared timber from the plot and traded the timber and wood for brick. The house was fitted up with all the modern conveniences. We lived in the Provo 3rd Ward in the Utah State. Mary Elizabeth and I had 7 children. Flora, Florence, your grandmother, Ray Joseph, Owen Marion, Boyd Charles, Blanche and Eva Miriam. We raised our children from our previous marriages. Mary Elizabeth's, David and my 2, Earl and Hazel. I owned the first bob sled with bells in Provo. I loved taking everyone for sleigh rides in the winter with the Scottish bells ringing, snuggled in warm quilts with warm bricks under their feet. I was very fond of children and always contributed to charitable causes. Elizabeth was the primary president and I took delight in providing candy and other surprises at their parties. I helped build church meeting houses, the Provo Tabernacle, roads and canals in Provo. I helped build Spring Delve in Provo Canyon for Jesse Knight. I said my religion to me was service and generosity rather than rites and ceremonies. I eventually had 4 farms in the Provo area. When I was 21 years old in 1876, I homesteaded my first land on the southwest Provo Bench. The next farm I bought was 12 acres in the Carterville area. The next land I bought was 5 acres of pasture land west where the first Provo fort was built. Then I added a large piece of land located south and east of Provo. I made a living by cutting timber, raising chickens, feeding cattle, milking cows, growing wheat, alfalfa, fruit, sugar beets and vegetables. Elizabeth and the children made butter and sold eggs to regular customers. I sold fruits and vegetables to the Indian reservation. I hunted deer for food. Elizabeth and I loved the outdoors. We took our children camping often. I am a believer in the principles of the Republican Party. It was reported in the Provo Inquirer that $285 was donated by an M. Davis, for the maintenance of the infirmary. I cannot deny the report. In the wintertime, I used to haul produce, potatoes and apples wrapped in straw in the sleigh across Utah Lake on the ice to Camp Floyd to sell to Johnson's Army soldiers. I occasionally took some of my mother's cherry pies to sell. After I sold the produce and pies, would camp out and cut a load of cedar posts and haul them back across the frozen lake for use on my farms. I drove my team and wagon out to the bench to do my fruit tree farming. I gave the leaders of the Lakeview Ward donations saying, "Here is $1. If I lived out here, I would be in your ward, so it won't hurt me to help a little." Once when Elizabeth and I were camping up Daniels Canyon, I went fishing for dinner. When I returned to camp, I saw my wife had been captured by a band of young Indians. They had tied her to a tree and were using her for a frightful target practice game. I caught them before she was hit and scolded them vehemently, in their native language. They immediately recognized me and were terrified, for I was loved by their tribal chiefs. I was known as one of the white chiefs in the valley. My mother, Susan Ann, died in January 4, 1891 at the age of 64. I am a self-made man and became successful and a substantial farmer in Utah County. I enjoy the confidence and respect of most people. My father Joshua Davis died the 21st of November 1902 at the age of 82. We had a large barn and an log horse stable. West of them was a straw shed in which our cattle could get in and out of in a storm. When we thrashed our wheat, we blew the straw up on top of this shed. Bumblebees built a nest in this straw. Every time the horses and cattle would go in the shed, they got stung by the bees. So, I decided to dig the hive out. I got up on top of the shed and started digging down through with a pitchfork. I remember all of our neighbors were there, the Woods, Elizabeth's brother Jimmy and sister Claire. Elizabeth and the kids were on the south of the straw shed some 100 feet away so they wouldn't get stung. I can still hear Jimmy holler at me, "Al, get off that straw shed, you darn fool. You are going to get stung to death." Every time I dug down into the straw, a bee would come around and sting me, and I could hear Jimmy yell. I finally got the hive out without dying. I did finally die in the Provo Hospital June 28, 1904 at 10 a.m., of uremic poisoning, following an operation for an abscess on my kidney. I was 48 years old. I was married to Elizabeth for 14 years. Mary Elizabeth would live 20 more years, to the age of 60. Your grandmother Florence was 11 years old at the time of my death. This was 8 years before she would marry Mont Pullham. I was buried in the Provo Cemetery next to my wife's and father's family. Goodbye, Glee, I look forward to seeing you.